Between 1999 and 2004, Valencia enjoyed one of the most successful periods in their entire history, winning 2 league championships, 3 cups, as well as closely missing out on victory in back-to-back Champions League finals. But what happens if you go back to the mid-2000s? Can this formidable side win a Premier League title? It's 2005 and we've arrived in Valencia. This is a squad not only of immense quality, but also fantastic depth. In basically every position, we have a decent deputy. We have a relatively clean bill of health, with the only long-term absences Edu and George Lopez. One major element of the club's success in recent years is the form of Roberto Ayala. During both league wins, the Argentine defender played a pivotal part in the side, conceding just 27 goals during the entire seasons. We'll need him to retain that form over in England. Ahead of him is his invaluable compatriot, Pablo Aimar. Aged 25, he's just entering his prime. In just over 5 full seasons at the Mestalla, he played 216 matches, contributing 33 goals and 50 assists. It's the top of the field where our not-so-secret weapon lies, David Villa. Over the past 4 years he scored 80 times in the colours of Sporting Gijon and Real Zaragoza. In reality, he'd continue those goal-scoring instincts in the colours of Los Ches. The 2006 season would see Valencia place 3rd in the La Liga table, 13 points behind eventual champions Barcelona. This time around they won't be having to worry about their traditional rivals. They'll be competing with the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, and 2006 winners Chelsea. For the upcoming season, we'll be varying between a 4-1-4-1 and 4-1-2-3. There really isn't a weak position in our squad. What has become very apparent too is the depth of quality we have in wide midfield positions. With Vicente, Angulo, Mista, Rifet, Marco Dival, we have the ability to really rotate and give chances to everyone. Let's play through the season and see what happens. And it would be a tricky opener, with a trip to Goodison Park. One player I haven't mentioned yet is Santiago Canizares. Aged 35, he's a vastly experienced keeper and easily amongst the division's best. At least that's what I assumed before a ball being kicked. Within 5 minutes of the new season starting, he made a very questionable decision with James Beattie in front of him. Matchday 1 would end in a 2-1 defeat. A week later, Fulham would visit us. The only notable change would be the inclusion of our new arrival, Patrick Kluivert. In reality, this would prove to be amongst the most disappointing transfers in the club's history. But the Dutchman did not receive that memo. It would be a debut to remember. After some lovely build-up, he receives the through ball from Aimar, and what an incredible finish. He'd leave the field having scored 4, twice as many as he managed in his entire Valencia career. With 4 matches played, and after a disappointing opening match, things had quickly improved. 6th place, but with a game in hand meant moving into the Champions League places was a possibility. But for that to come into fruition meant our first massive challenge of the season, Manchester United at home. For this game, we'll be starting with Miguel Angulo wide on the right. His league form has been a little disappointing so far, and going up against Gabriel Heinze won't be easy. But it ended up being a game of very few chances, a 0-0 draw, a result I was happy to take. A week later, we'd secure another draw on the road v City, with an absolutely incredible strike by David Villa, one which earned him a runner-up in the Goal of the Season awards. Over the next 2 games, our decent run would continue, picking up back-to-back wins against Villa and Birmingham before hosting Arsenal. We'd face a future Valencia man, Philip Senderos. During the 2014 season, he'd play 11 games at the club, on the way to an 8th place finish. And the Swiss international's defending was questionable. Another great through ball by Aimar finds David Villa, who hits an instinctive finish. Once again though, Arsenal would take the lead. With just 12 minutes remaining, we pushed hard for the equaliser, and the ball broke to Kluivert. That would be the game's final goal. once again we'd avoided defeat against one of the league's biggest sides. As we moved closer to December, those tricky games just kept on coming. Not the opportune time for an injury crisis to strike. Without Vicente and Mista, who dominated the minutes in the wide left position so far, will be giving Ruggero his first league start of the campaign. Despite Newcastle going down to 10 men early, and David Villa's goal, we'd not be able to capitalise, leaving the North East with only a single point. Another visit to the region would follow shortly after, this time Middlesbrough. They'd have on their books another familiar face to Valencia fans, Gaizka Mendieta. The Spanish international is now 31, but still possesses enormous technical quality. And it would be he who'd create the game's opening goal. A cross into the middle engineers chaos before Hasselbank converts. But again, our quality would show. Our Argentine playmaker finds Mista on the left, who squares it perfectly for David Villa to convert. In the final match of the calendar year, it would be the Rafa Benitez derby, and one which took on particular significance considering our result against them earlier in the season. Our League Cup third round tie would end in abject humiliation at the hands of the Reds, 6-1 to Liverpool. 2 months later, we'd have a chance for revenge. And that's just what we'd achieve. Again, David Villa was decisive as we picked up another win. At the midway stage, things have been going remarkably well. We've lost just twice and find ourselves 6 points from the summit. If we could convert just a few more of these draws into wins, over the second half of the season, a league title could be a real possibility. Let's briefly move away from the Prem though, and see how Valencia performed in other competitions. As mentioned earlier, the less said about the League Cup the better. Our Intertoto Cup final was a lot more enjoyable. 8-0 on aggregate against Lazio meant a place in the UEFA Cup this season. With a routine victory over Austrian side Pasching, we'd make it to the group stage of the competition. Matchday 1 would end in disaster, with the French side winning 1-0. In the next round of games, we'd secure a victory against PAOK before hosting Anderlecht. In Europe and the domestic cups, I tried to rotate the squad as much as possible. Players like Hugo Viana, who weren't all that involved in the Premier League, really enabled our starters to rest. A backup who'd performed brilliantly all season was Patrick Kluivert. Again, the Dutchman would find the scoring touch when needed. With a 1-1 draw against Osasuna, we'd done enough to secure passage to the knockout stages. Our first opponent, Scottish Giants Rangers. In the mid-2000s, this was a team of top quality and reigning champions. They could still call on a prime Dado Perso. Age 31, this was actually his penultimate professional season, but still showed that goal-scoring touch in the SPL. It was a tightly fought contest. David Villa would open the scoring in the first half, but with just seconds remaining, a defensive lapse, and before we knew it, Rangers had found the back of the net. In the return leg, David Villa would score 2 decisive away goals. Despite this late equaliser, 3-3 on aggregate was enough for us to move on. Our reward for progression wasn't very appetising though. After Barcelona finished third in their Champions League group, the UEFA Cup round of 16 would see us face our Catalan rivals. In reality, this side would go on to win the Champions League, and it's not all that surprising when you look at the squad. Carlos Puyol, Ronaldinho, Deco, Eto'o, they even have Messi on the bench. After a 1-1 draw in the first leg, the tie would be decided at Mestalla, again by David Villa. His hat-trick secures a convincing victory. Confidence was high entering our quarter-final against Stuttgart. With a 1-0 win in the opening match, we travelled to Germany looking for a decisive away goal. Within 20 minutes, that optimism had evaporated. Our advantage had been erased, as we struggled to get any rhythm. Cacao's second goal would be the game winner. In a European campaign which had begun back in July with an Intertoto Cup win, it ends here in Stuttgart. The FA Cup offered a final chance for a cup win. With early round victories against Cardiff and Fulham, it set up a 5th round tie at Selhurst Park. Again, the Dutchman would open the scoring. The keeper makes a tremendous effort to keep the ball out, but he can only parry it into our forward's path. It would be Aymar who'd secure a 2-1 win. A simple long ball, Palace failed to defend, and the Argentines away, before an awesome finish. After prevailing in the quarter-final and semi-final against Wigan and Middlesbrough respectively, we found ourselves at Wembley with a real chance for silverware. Inside 23 minutes, we'd absolutely dominated the game. An Aymar free kick and David Villa penalty was followed up by this finish. I'm not gonna lie, I'd already begun thinking of what to say to the media after our historic victory. That was at least until David Albelda's first half red card. This will surely go down as one of the worst cup final capitulations in history. With 10 men, we couldn't cope with their side. Thierry Henry again makes the most of a defensive error. In the end, it would finish 6-3, 6 unanswered goals. The Premier League was our final hope for a trophy. With 15 matches remaining and ground to make up on United, our visit to Old Trafford would be pivotal. Them missing Rooney and Ronaldo really offered us a chance for a result. But we'd also be suffering absences of our own. With Aurelio's short-term injury, we'd be asking 40-year-old fullback Amadeo Carboni to play left-back. And he'd be involved in the go-ahead goal. A perfectly weighted ball to Vicente, who finds David Villa, before an elite chip, which proved to be the game winner. We'd inflicted just a second league defeat of the season on Man United. Over the next 5 matches, we just didn't capitalise though, drawing 3 out of 5, before travelling to the Emirates. Minus the red card debacle in the cup final, David Albelda's league form has been impressive to say the least. In a nearly 2-decade-long career with Valencia, he'd play 500 league matches. But this time around, we'd get the better of the North London side. Questionable defending by Gaël Clichy sets us on our way to a 2-1 victory. From one Arsenal man to another, following his 10-month injury absence, we could finally add Edu to the squad for our game against City. It wasn't a return to remember. After Vicente opened the scoring, we failed to push on. Vassell converts this rebound and ensures a second draw between the sides this season. And as the season drew to a close, we couldn't stop tying matches. A trip to the Valley would again end without a decisive result. David Villa would score the equaliser. The final Premier League game of the season would be a trip to Anfield, and the third and final instalment of the Rafa trilogy. Funnily enough, he'll be deploying an ex-Valencia man in the midfield, Mo Sissoko. During his time in Spain, he'd win 3 medals, including the 03-04 league triumph. Again, Benitez would get the better of us. In a timid and uninspiring 3-1 defeat, we were outplayed. Not surprising we would lose, with defending like this. Here are our full season stats. What really jumps out at me is the performance of our entire back line and keeper. All of them did a fantastic job. In the second half of the year, we did lose Ayala for around 6 weeks, and when he was replaced, the drop-off was significant. Another essential player has to be Ruben Baraja. The number of goals he contributed, particularly in our European campaign, was integral to us making the latter stages. For me, our biggest disappointment would have to be Rufete. The Spain international midfielder got a lot of opportunities in the side, but 5 goal contributions in 37 appearances is a pretty pitiful return. One man who didn't have the same issues in front of goal was David Villa. I tried to limit his minutes as much as possible in the domestic cups, which paid off nicely. In the league and in Europe, he was almost 100% fit every match and ready to get amongst the goals. Interestingly, he also took 14 penalties over the course of the year and didn't miss a single one. With goal-scoring instincts like that, it's not surprising that he'd win the Premier League Golden Boot, beating out Nicolas Anelka by 3. But where did Valencia place in the table? Well, we'd finished the season in 4th place. Defensively we were impressive, and actually conceded less goals than in Valencia's 2 most recent title victories. Those 15 draws were just too costly, especially the countless ones against teams towards the foot of the table. I'm quite happy with only losing 5 matches, and considering we lost to Chelsea twice, everyone else found us pretty difficult to beat. We also overcame a catastrophic start to move up the table nicely. Between match week 13 and 37, we never dropped out of the top 3. If Liverpool hadn't prevailed on the final day, it would have been nicer to get that higher finish. 2 decades ago, Valencia had truly established themselves amongst the elite of European football. Their prolonged success against all the odds in La Liga ensured their side is still fondly remembered today. In the coming months, they'll be hoping to improve their situation in the league and eventually return to the success of the past.